Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, August the 25th. We'll cover a couple of topics this morning, including the tropical scene in the Atlantic Basin. There are a couple of systems out there, but it really looks relatively quiet in terms of any impact or any potential impact on the U.S. here over the next week to 10 days or so. We'll go through the MJO and the latest on the accumulated cyclone energy. And then we'll take a look at probably the biggest weather story over the next several days, in my opinion, the very large scale, cooler than normal conditions coming into the U.S. for the next several days, and there'll be another cool blast of air in a week or so coming into the continental U.S. So really, that is quite a story here as we close out the month of August. Very comfortable conditions across a wide part of the nation, and it looks like September will probably get off to a comfortable start as well. But let's start off here in the tropics. We do have a tropical storm right now, Fernand. It is relatively harmless as far as the U.S. mainland is concerned, as it will continue to push on a northeasterly direction over the next few days out over the even colder and colder waters of the North Atlantic. There's a weak system that has moved into the eastern part of the Caribbean Sea. Does not have much of a chance. Right now, atmospheric conditions are not all that favorable. We'll talk about the MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation, not in a favorable phase for tropical storm intensification or development in the Atlantic Basin, at least not for the next week to 10 days or so. Beyond that, there's a chance that the MJO moves back into a more favorable position as we go through the early to middle part of September. But for right now, one very weak tropical system over the eastern Caribbean, and yes, a tropical storm that will move off to the north and east over the next few days. Well, we've talked about the accumulated cyclone energy, various video discussions over the last several weeks here. We are now above normal in the Atlantic Basin, thanks largely to Hurricane Erin. It was at one point a Category 5 storm. It also lasted a relatively long period of time, and both the magnitude and the duration of a tropical system have an impact on the accumulated cyclone energy. So right here, we're showing the actual numbers well above normal right now here for the North Atlantic. However, for the Northern Hemisphere as a whole, which is shown right down here, we're still well below normal, and that is largely as a result of a quiet Pacific Ocean. It continues to be relatively quiet. The Pacific is so large, it's split into two areas here, basically the East and the West Pacific, both of which are well below normal for this stage of the tropical season. The Indian Ocean hasn't had any storm to speak of up till now, and the combination of the Indian Ocean and the most important ocean of all, the Pacific Ocean, leads the Northern Hemisphere to be well below normal for this stage of the tropical season. Well, one last map as far as the tropical scene is concerned, and then we'll focus it on these cool air outbreaks for the continental U.S. Very impressive indeed. This is a map that we show often here at ArcfieldWeather.com, Madden-Julian oscillation as depicted by the most recent European model run. And this circle right here represents a position of the MJO, which is a tropical disturbance that kind of regularly propagates along the tropical part of the globe here. Anytime the MJO falls within this circle right here, it's a relatively weak or relatively neutral type of signal. And let me clear the page there. And indeed, the MJO is headed right inside to a very weak position or a very neutral position here over the next several days for the remainder of the month of August. In other words, the MJO will not be in a favorable position over the next week to 10 days or so for development in the tropical storm development in the Atlantic Basin. It's not the only factor, of course. There are other factors, including of which probably one of the most important factors this time of the year, sea surface temperatures, which are pretty much at their peak as we go through the next couple of weeks into the early part and maybe the middle part of September. the sea surface temperatures kind of reach their highest levels this time of year. Always, that's a favorable position to be in for tropical storm development. But from an atmospheric point of view, the MJO is weak or neutral over the next week to 10 days or so. Now, beyond that, the European model tries to get the MJO back into what we call phase 1 right here. And these phases down here, 1, 2, and 3, are more favorable for tropical storm development. So it's possible that as we go through the early part of September, the MJO will become a boost once again for tropical storm development in the Atlantic Basin. But of course, as I said, the next week to 10 days, relatively quiet. Now let's kind of turn our attention away from the tropicals and back to the continental U.S. and specifically the cold air outbreaks for this time of the year. Very impressive indeed. We'll take a look at the 850 millibar temperature anomalies in a moment, but a large scale colder than normal air mass right now has penetrated into the continental U.S., and that's not the last of these kind of cold air outbreaks for this time of the year. We have another one coming in a week to 10 days or so. One of the teleconnection indices I like to look at this time of the year, the North Atlantic oscillation. This becomes, of course, increasingly important during the winter season, but one of the factors I use to come up with a winter outlook is what has the NAO done during the fall season as we lead up to the winter. There is some evidence that if the NAO spends a lot of time in negative territory during the fall, that often translates to negative NAO during the winter season, the following winter season. A negative NAO typically is associated with high latitude blocking and an increased chance of cold air outbreaks into the continental U.S., specifically primarily the central and eastern U.S. Indeed, that's what we have right now, is a large-scale colder than normal air mass for much of the eastern two-thirds of the nation over the next several days. And we do have an NAO that has been in negative territory and slightly below the neutral line here going forward into the early part of September. This horizontal line right here represents neutral. Anything below is negative. Again, you have seen a relatively negative kind of an NAO over the last several weeks. And again, this is just one thing I'll monitor over the next several weeks to give kind of maybe a clue as to what kind of winter weather conditions we can expect across the nation here. But for right now, a slightly negative NAO and a very impressive cooler than normal air mass has indeed penetrated into the continental U.S. And here it is, that impressive colder than normal outbreak that now has encompassed much of the Midwest, the central and northern plains, and is spreading to the south and east. A cold front is working its way right now through the Mid-Atlantic region, ushering in this cooler than normal air mass. But this is very impressive for this time of the year, any time of the year, when you're well below normal, as we're seeing right here. Look at the legend over here. We're talking some 10 to 20 degrees below normal in some spots, and even for the month of August, that was very impressive indeed. And again, we have that slightly negative NAO, which during the wintertime gives us a clue that there may be colder than normal air outbreaks into the central and eastern U.S. if it's in negative territory for a sustained period of time. Now, let's move forward, and we'll see this slowly spreading to the south and east, below normal temperatures really for the next several days, probably going through the upcoming weekend in much of the eastern half of the nation. That takes us to September 1st, which begins on Monday, Labor Day, a week from today. And here we are at midweek. You see kind of a reinforcing colder than normal air mass dropping across the Hudson Bay region into the southeastern part of Canada by the end of the work week. And indeed, that moves back into the northeast and mid-Atlantic region as we begin the Labor Day weekend here on Friday, and then on Saturday and Sunday below normal conditions again throughout much of the eastern two-thirds of the nation as we end the weekend here on Sunday and then begin the month of September. This is the forecast map for a week from today, next Monday, Labor Day. Still much cooler than normal conditions across much of the eastern half of the nation. Very impressive indeed. We'll go forward in time here. See, Canada has some above normal air, but here comes another shot of impressively cool air. All the way now, we're into the middle part of next week. This is all the way out to Thursday, September 4th here, and that slides to the south and east, and again represents some quite cool conditions here for in this case, the early part of September. This is all the way out to the end of next week. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps using last night's 0Z run of the GFS. All of these maps, by the way, from the GFS available on tropicaltidbits.com. A little bit of rain as we begin the day here on Monday across the northeastern states. That's associated with that strong cold front that is moving through right now, and it really paves the way for a very comfortable week and probably comfortable weather conditions right through the upcoming Labor Day weekend. We'll move forward in time here. Relatively dry week as well. And here is this high pressure area, which originated up in central Canada, has dropped down into the middle part of the nation, and it will control the weather for several days with a beautiful air mass for this time of the year throughout the Midwest, the central and northern plains, the mid-Atlantic, the northeast, the Great Lakes, much of the eastern two-thirds of the nation. Here we go, the latter part of the week, and there will be that reinforcing cold frontal system, reinforcing cold for this time of the year, moving into the northeastern states by the end of the work week. And here it is, Friday morning, another Canadian high-pressure system takes control just in time for the Labor Day weekend, and it's a cooler than normal air mass, relatively dry, again, very little rain over the next several days. And here we go all the way into Sunday, and then finally into Monday. This is a week from today, and that Canadian high pressure moves off the coast a week from now, next Monday. That could open the door for a much more moisture to move to the north and east. And again, for the next several days, dry conditions, mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S., in the same areas that will be below normal temperature-wise for much of the time as we go through the last week of August. And this upcoming weekend represents the last couple of days of the month of August. By the way, August so far has been slightly below normal in places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. And those negative temperature numbers here relative to normal will only increase over the next several days or so. So for next week, maybe a return of some moisture, and we'll see if the tropics actually get a little bit more active as we go through the early to middle part of September with a possible more favorable MJO. And we'll continue to track that here at arcfieldweather.com over the next few days. That's it for now. For arcfieldweather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.